How's it going, everyone? This is George here, and today we are finally going to be talking about one of my favorite superhero movies ever, Spider Man 2. That's right, I'm continuing the Spider Man movie series as well as reviewing older movies again, and I can't wait to talk about this one. I rewatched it earlier this week, and I probably rewatched this movie so many times throughout the years. Probably the superhero film I've rewatched the most. So I will be getting to spoilers because this is an older movie. So if you have not seen Spider-Man 2, which I hope you have, because not only has it was it out in theaters 17 years ago, but it's been out on DVD, Blu-ray, streaming services, television. So you've had many opportunities to watch it. If you have seen Spider-Man 2, or you don't mind spoilers, then stick around to hear my thoughts on Spider-Man 2 and why I think it's considered one of the best superhero movies of all time, or at least my one of my favorites. This is like one of my top three favorite superhero movies ever. So Spider-Man 2 basically continues 2 years after the first Spider-Man film, and we really see how the decisions Peter Parker made at the end of Spider-Man, the consequences of those decisions. And we basically see Peter Parker continuing being Spider-Man, but it's basically had a strain on his life. Basically, the beginning of this film is kicking the crap out of Peter Parker. He's struggling with his jobs. He gets fired from his pizza job earlier in the film. He's not doing well in school because he's either late or he's exhausted during class. Half the city's against Spider Man. And his relationships with Harry and MJ are pretty strained. Mary Jane is starting to move on from another guy, and while she still loves Peter, she's also giving up hope that one day Peter will want to be with her. And Harry feels like Peter is no longer loyal to him, that he's protecting Spider Man, and he still blames Spider Man for killing his father. And you've seen that in those past 2 years, it seems like Harry's anger for Spider Man has grown, and you see that more so throughout the film. And also, we see Peter's living with the guilt of Uncle Ben's death still, and that he's worried about being honest about it with Aunt May, who's dealing with some financial problems of her own. And of course, Peter's struggling to pay his rent to Mr. Dinkovich, one of the funniest characters introduced only in a superhero film. Rent? Yes, I really enjoy that character. And yeah, the humor in this film really works, whether it's like pizza time or the humor with paying the rent, Jameson's humor. Like this is a funny film, but it's also like the first Spider-Man film also has its dark moments. And we're gonna get into those dark moments later in the video. So while Spider-Man is taking its toll on Peter's life, Peter gets to meet one of his science heroes, Dr. Otto Octavius, played brilliantly by Alfred Molina. This is one of the best casting choices for a supervillain and one of the best supervillains, in my opinion, in a superhero movie. And Molina does such a great job with this. And like Raimi, he was also into comics, so it always helps when, whether it's the director or the actor, was into the comics like earlier on. And you see at first, like, this isn't like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, like some portrayals of Doc Ock have been in some of the animated shows. This is a scientist that is a relatively good man. He wants to use science for the good of mankind. He wants to use his intelligence for that. And you see that in his first conversation with Peter Parker, where he kind of tells Peter off for being brilliant but also lazy, and that being brilliant is just not enough. And the conversation they have, like when you're younger and you first watch this movie for the first time, you don't really appreciate all that much. Like you just want to get into the Spider-Man action. You want to see Doc Ock become the bad guy. But you really enjoy like the chemistry between Alfred Molina and Tobey Maguire, how they're discussing science, how Peter not just looks up to Otto Octavius not just in science, but also he sees his marriage with his wife Rosie, played by Donna Murphy, and Peter, and looking at how Peter just looks at this marriage, like he wants something like that with Mary Jane, and Otto even gives him relationship advice, like read her poetry, and like that really shows like how this all connects like into the film, like how everything connects. So obviously Doc Ock doesn't remain good for the whole time. The science experiment goes wrong. And one of the best parts of this film, and also where Sam Raimi shows why he's also a great horror director. Before he directed the Spider-Man movies, he was known for directing the Evil Dead trilogy from the 80s, early 90s. And the scene where Doc Ock's metal arms are killing these doctors, it's like horror film material, but it's also great. And this is where we get into the darker aspect that Raimi's so great at capturing with his Spider-Man trilogy, the perfect balance of the lighthearted moments in this film and also the dark moments in this film. And the thing I like about the metal arms is like they're practical. And we just recently heard that in No Way Home, it's not going to be the case. They're going to be CGI for No Way Home. For those of you who don't know, Alfred Molina is returning in Spider-Man No Way Home as Doc Ock. And while that's a little disappointing that it's not going to be practical like in the Raimi films, it's been 17 years and I'm just so excited to see him return. But yeah, just like what they've done in this film, like the special effects, like the practical effects, like they did a great job with like all of them. So while all this stuff is going on, Spider-Man is also losing his powers. And a lot of this is because so much is just being like built into him. Like his life is not going the way that he wants. Mary Jane is, getting distant from him. At some point she's engaged to her boyfriend John Jameson, J. Jonah Jameson's son. Harry's, keep pressuring him about Spider-Man. All this stuff that's going on, and that's really taking a toll on him where he's losing his powers. He's feeling not well. And at some point you see that when his powers are being lost, like it puts him in grave danger. He'll be web slinging and then he won't have the web anymore. When he's fighting Doc Ock in the bank heist scene, his web shooters like are no longer work. Well, not web shooters. His webs are no longer working when he needs them. And the fights between Spider-Man and Doc Ock, I think, are very entertaining. From the bank fight scene, then the train sequence, and we'll get to the train sequence more so. But the fight scenes look great. I think the Raimi fight scenes in all three Spider-Man films, just in general, are phenomenal to watch. I think they're some of my favorites to watch in superhero films, and just great to look at. So after the bank scene comes the worst night of Peter Parker's life. Mary Jane calls him an empty seat because he didn't make it to her play and he's just making up excuses. He's not being honest with her. Harry slapping Peter like in front of everyone, feeling all drunk and all that. His anger really building up because he feels like not just Peter like is not telling him about Spider-Man, but he blames Peter for his relationship with Mary Jane in the previous film not working, for taking his father's love away from him. And really, this is like Blythe kicks the crap out of Peter Parker in this movie. Like Raimi captures the consequences of being Spider-Man so well. How this is not just a gift but a curse for Spider-Man. Like this shows that out of any superhero director, Raimi understands these characters the best. And then we get the iconic scene like after Peter has a talk with Uncle Ben saying he's Spider-Man no more. We see the iconic scene of Spider-Man putting his costume in the garbage. Spider-Man no more. It's really reminiscent of Amazing Spider-Man 50, that cover of Spider-Man no more. And a much more powerful scene that I think it gets credit for. And then you go into a cheesy scene where Peter's walking around living a normal life again, starting to do better in school again, and they're playing the raindrops keep falling on my head. I like the musical moments that Raimi has in this film, like the montages. Like earlier on in the film, you have the scene where they're playing the song Hold On, where Peter Parker's getting ready to go to Mary Jane's play, and the song really fits what Peter's trying to do. He's trying to finally be there for Mary Jane. And then like you have this scene where like the raindrops keep falling on my head, where Peter has no care in the world. He's leaving free. He no longer has the responsibilities. Like, Raimi has some excellent song choices for these musical montages. But of course, thing things start to happen. Crime goes up. Oh, I do want to address this. The one thing that kind of annoys me with this film, as much as I love it, is they cut the scene out where after Jameson gets the costume, because a garbage man later gives the costume to J. Jonah Jameson. Jameson puts the costume on and pretends to be Spider-Man in his office, and that is hilarious. But it's also a deleted scene. I get it, you gotta cut stuff out, but that should have been the one deleted scene they should have definitely kept, and it's hilarious to watch. But anyways, crime's going back up, and then we see Peter starting to handle things better. He is finally open with Aunt May about Uncle Ben's death, and at first Aunt May's so shocked she walks away from Peter, but then the next time they talk, she tells him how proud he is and gives one of the best speeches in a film. Her "I believe there's a hero in all of us" speech, and this is where Rosemary Harris really shines as Aunt May and gives one of her best performances. And I think it's definitely like a scene, even if you never see the whole movie, it's a scene that I think every person probably needs to see at least once in their life, because it resonates not just with superheroes, but just like heroes in general in real life. And it's definitely one of the best scenes in a superhero film. Like, there's no action, it's really about, and it also hints that she kind of knows that Peter is Spider-Man. Now, she never officially says, "Hey, I know you're Spider-Man," but it's a hint that she kind of knows who Peter really is. And it does lead into a scene where Peter's trying to become Spider-Man again, and it gives one of the more hilariously iconic scenes where he's yelling, "I'm back," jumping off a building, but then falls down, hits his back on a car, and says, "My back." But that's the thing I love about Spider-Man 2. It's just that balance of funny moments, but also serious moments, and they balance it out so well. So there's that. And then the one thing that people might get annoyed about with this film is that once again, Mary Jane is a damsel in distress. She's yelling a lot. But Peter Parker gets his powers. He takes his suit back from Jameson. Like, around the time where J. Jonah Jameson's finally admitting that he believes Spider-Man is a hero, and then goes on this rant about how Spider-Man's a thief and a criminal. And then you get the great fight sequence on top of the clock tower and into the train. Great fight. And then when Spider-Man's saving these people on the train without his mask, and just the people on the train seeing that he's just a young kid, and them basically coming to his defense when Octavius is trying to take him, them saying they're not going to reveal his identity, it really shows how far Spider-Man has come. And Spider-Man finally realizes how important he is and how much people admire him than he really assumed. So obviously, Harry finds out that Peter's Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man has his final fight with Doc Ock in the boathouse. Peter and Doc Ock have a moment of conversation. I really like, that conversation at the end where Peter talks Otto out of doing what he's doing, and Peter finally tells Mary Jane that he does love her, and she finally finds out that he's Spider-Man. And at first, he once again rejects her, but then on the day of her wedding to John Jameson, she comes back and says, "Hey, this is my choice, and I want to be with you," and really ends on a much higher note, where Peter and Mary Jane are finally together. He's back to being Spider-Man. His confidence is once again high up, but there is still that one lingering thing, which is now that Harry knows that Peter is Spider-Man, he also now knows that his father's the Green Goblin after getting a vision of his father, and really sets up Spider-Man 3, or how Spider-Man 3 maybe should have gone. But yeah, with Spider-Man 2, there's just so much I like about this movie. There's so much I enjoy. And there might be some things that some people might nitpick about. But again, for me, this is one of the best superhero sequels. This really takes what the first film established, and I love the first film, and took it up a next level. I did give the first film an A+, so obviously Spider-Man 2 is an A+, um, because not just the things I just mentioned, but also the score. Danny Elfman, a great score, although him and Sam Raimi did have a fallout while making the score for this film, although they eventually reunited for Oz Great and Powerful. But yeah, the stellar performances, Toby, Kirsten, James are still great. And as I said, Alfred Molina is phenomenal as his character. Rosemary Harris, I think, gave her best performance as Aunt May in these films. J.K. Simmons is entertaining as usual. And yeah, Bruce Campbell's small appearance as the snooty usher that refused to let Peter go into the play. Yeah, Spider-Man 2 really nails every aspect of a superhero film and a film in general. Great performances, great action, great story. Everything just feels balanced out. So obviously, once I get into Spider-Man 3, we'll dive into some of the problems with Spider-Man 3. Although, I'll be honest, I don't hate Spider-Man 3, so I'll give my take on Spider-Man 3 when I get to it. But yeah, Spider-Man 2 is an A+. Great movie. Probably the superhero film I've rewatched the most. And if you have not seen it yet, I highly recommend you see it. And I really hope No Way Home does justice to Alfred Molina's Doc Ock. I do have some theories about what they can do with Doc Ock, because some people are worried that, oh, his sacrifice in Spider-Man 2 is going to be all for nothing, or it's going to get ruined. I feel like they're going to do it in a way that's not going to ruin it. And I feel like Alfred Molina would not have come back unless he saw something promising that would not undo what they did with that character. But yeah, Spider-Man 2. I love this movie a lot. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching this. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please share this with someone that loves Spider-Man movies. I don't know when I'm going to do my Spider-Man 3 review, because I do want to review a couple of other movies, because it is Halloween, and there's some Halloween theme movies that I want to get into. I'm not going to get into every single Halloween theme movie or theme October theme movie, whatever you want to call them. But I do have some movies I also want to do. So, but yeah, Spider-Man 3 should be coming out in the next couple weeks. My review of Spider-Man 3. In the meantime, everyone, take care.